Agree the single biggest unforced error of the Biden administration was what they did in the first few days to basically undo the executive action that had been taken by the previous administration to secure the border. We entered into a good faith negotiation led by Senator Langford with the administration to try to come up with something we could agree on. It's pretty obvious that was not likely to pass the Senate and certainly wouldn't have passed the House. So what the president is left with is what he can do on his own. And he ought to do everything he can do on his own. Legislation, I've been around a while, as you all know. It's been very difficult to legislate in this area the whole time I've been here. So the president needs to step up to it, do everything he can do on his own, because legislation obviously is not going to clear this year.
Next to the economy, which the administration has completely mishandled, the next and most important issue in the minds of most people in this country is the border, as Senator McConnell pointed out. And in fact, you look at the polls, 80% of Americans believe the border is an issue. And more than 50% of Americans believe it is a major issue. Senate Republicans happen to agree on that, which is why we've been urging the Biden administration to take the actions that are necessary to get operational control of the border, and they can consistently fail in that regard. This is an example of just the gotaways. So you hear us talk about numbers like those apprehended. That number is 7.5 million or so. There have been, since President Biden took office, about 1.8 million gotaways. And this is just, look at this. I mean, this is when he takes office. You get 2021, 2, 3, and you know, we've got a long ways to go this year yet. But this is the way that the gotaways have increased. Now, these are known gotaways, meaning that they were observed, they couldn't catch them. There are also unknown gotaways. The number could be significantly higher. And what's really concerning about all this, of course, is that since President Biden's taken office, 362 people who have been apprehended, those who have been caught, are on the terrorist watch list. That doesn't include the number on this list or the unknown gotaways. So Republicans have tried consistently, repeatedly, to get the Democrats to focus on it. We twice had votes on H.R. 2, which is a bill that passed the House of Representatives. The Democrats defeated it, voted against it. They have blocked legislation like Senator Blackburn's bill that basically would have said that law enforcement officials, state and local law enforcement officials, can detain criminals, illegal criminals, until they can be deported. There was a Budd bill that would have made attacking a law enforcement officer a deportable offense. The Democrats blocked that. They blocked a bill by Senator Hagerty, if you can imagine this, that would make it a requirement that to be counted in the census, you actually have to be a citizen of the country. They blocked that legislation. So Republicans have tried repeatedly to get Democrats to focus on this on the floor, and they have not. So where we are right now, obviously, is this has become a political liability, a political vulnerability for the Democrats. I wish they were focused on this issue because they think it's a national security issue. The reason all of a sudden they're interested in doing something, or at least appearing to be doing something, is because they know they've got a big political vulnerability on this. This can be solved very simply. This president, President Biden, can reverse all the policies that he implemented the day he took office, which is what has led to this massive, massive problem at our southern border. And we still encourage him to do that. But all the charades and political theater the Democrats are trying to adopt on the Senate floor to protect incumbents that they are worried, they know are on the wrong side of this issue, isn't going to change the way things are at our southern border.
Chuck Schumer is going to bring to the floor of the Senate a so-called immigration bill this week that he knows is doomed to fail because it failed the last time he tried the same trick. Democrats are desperately trying to deflect the blame for the damage that's been caused to our country as a result of our wide-open southern border. People all across the country know that it's the Democrats' fault for bringing in the drugs, the death, the destruction that comes from our southern border. When Joe Biden took that first step into the White House as president, our southern border was secure. He threw open the border along with the Democrats, and 10 million illegal immigrants invaded our country. People on the criminal watch list, cartel criminals, drug dealers, people from all parts of the world came across our southern border. Just a few weeks ago, a couple of those illegal immigrants who came in were arrested trying to break in to our Marine Corps base that holds our combat command. One apparently was on the terrorist watch list. So what did Biden's Homeland Security Director and the department say? Well, they dummied up. They wouldn't tell us anything about the identity or the intentions of those individuals. What they said is that the privacy of those illegal immigrants outweighed the right of public interest. They said minimal public interest. Well, look, Republicans continue to fight for the public interest, for public safety. Democrats are fighting for and voting for wide open borders. They're the ones that stopped construction of the border wall. They're the ones that stopped telling people to leave the country, evicting people who were here who were criminal illegal immigrants. They're the ones that stopped allowing the Border Patrol to enforce the laws of the land. So Chuck Schumer is going to be in here trying to throw a Hail Mary pass to save his vulnerable Democrats. The election is just a few months away. The American people will have an opportunity at that time to hold accountable Joe Biden and these open border Democrats.
I think all of us remember what was going on about 4 years ago in 2020. We were in the throes of COVID-19, pandemic that swept all around the world. Well, folks, here we are 4 years later, and finally, the scientists at EcoHealth will never be allowed to get their hands on bats or our taxpayer funding ever again. For years, folks, I've been working very hard to protect Americans from funding EcoHealth's dangerous experiments at Chinese labs, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the same work that they are doing now right here on American soil. So yeah, EcoHealth Alliance working right here in the U.S. doing the same thing they were doing at Chinese labs. And after years and years and years of denials by Dr. Fauci himself and his friends, HHS has finally now admitted that yes, folks, they were funding gain-of-function research at Wuhan Institute of Virology. Straight from HHS, they are finally admitting what they denied for years. So before getting any other batty ideas, what we need to do as Congress is put in place guardrails so that what happened at the Wuhan Institute of Virology never happens again, whether it's overseas in China or right here on American soil. So I'm working to ensure that Congress stops funding for all risky research of pandemic potential. So we need to make sure that Americans' taxpayer dollars are not being misspent, again, whether it's in China or right here in the good old United States of America.
Well, I wanted to bring to everybody's attention something that doesn't get much attention, and you've heard the term follow the money. So I looked up where did follow the money. I thought it was from a Tom Cruise movie, but it wasn't. It was from Watergate. And follow the money is what they did in Watergate, and we saw what happened. So my young staffer, who's very bright, and I see him over there, Adam Pack, followed the money. And the money is from the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. So in the name of green and environmental justice, there's over $40 billion that are going to be granted out through the EPA. So, with this great research that was done, what was discovered that in December, the EPA granted $50 million to an organization called Climate Justice Alliance. So we went to the website of Climate Justice Alliance. This is what we found on the website, that our taxpayer dollars are going to organizations such as this. This, at the bottom, is a picture of the bulldozer that went through the fence when Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th. They have a rendering on their website. It says decolonize Palestine, and it has a picture of that same bulldozer going through that fence. If you dig deeper, they want to defund the police, defund the military, either them or their affiliates want to have very radical, drastic initiatives that I think are anti-American. And they're certainly anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. So the Biden administration doesn't seem to care. $50 million in December, who knows how much more in the future, and other like groups, because there are other associated groups with this group. There's no inspector general for EPA to follow the money because they don't care. Because all they care about is the mission, the climate mission, no matter what the radical ideas that are associated with the groups. So then you could ask yourself, is this group really going to be funding climate, cleaning up the water and cleaning up the soil and cleaning up the air? Or are they going to be funding things like the protests they had in Hart just several weeks ago, where several of them were arrested? So follow the money. We're going to be doing that in the Environment and Public Works Committee. That's where the derivation of this was. And I find it rather startling to me that the EPA is not doing, and the administration are not doing any better research as to where our American taxpayer dollars are going.
So go back and watch the replays of what was going on in February of 21, when Joe Biden reversed policies that were working to secure the southern border that President Trump put in place. And now, 3.5 years later, we've seen the Senate Democrats doing nothing to try to solve the border crisis that we have. They've done nothing to stop illegals who are flooding into the country, those on the FBI terror watch list. They've allowed over 9 million illegal crossings up the southern border, but now they've seen the light, or maybe they've seen the polls. Senate Dems' border crisis has become a political crisis, and now they're looking to Chuck Schumer to bail them out. This is Washington cynicism at its finest, and the American people won't be fooled. This is a political stunt. The reason, look at the votes the Senate Democrats have already cast. They voted against the Lake and Riley Act, which calls for illegals who commit theft or shoplifting to be detained or deported. They voted against deportation for illegals who are assaulting police officers. They voted to keep state and local law enforcement from detaining illegals who commit crimes until they can be deported. This is the real record of Senate Democrats, and the spin or the sham votes will not be able to erase this dismal record that opened our southern border and made America unsafe.
Leader McConnell.
I think I ought to give Manu one more opportunity, don't you? It happens once a week.
Okay. This time I want to ask you about Justice Alito. There was a report last week that outside of Justice Alito's home, there was an upside-down American flag that was flown outside of his home, similar to what was used by the January 6th rioters. Was that appropriate for the justice to do that? And should he recuse himself in any cases relating to the election?
It seems to me there are just nonstop attacks on the Supreme Court, week after week after week. And so I'm not going to dignify that with a response. We need to leave the Supreme Court alone, protect them from people who went into their neighborhoods and tried to do them harm. Look out for the Supreme Court. That's part of the job of the administration.
Leader McConnell,
Yeah.
what was your message to the president when you talked to him when there was a telephone conversation about this border bill?
Yesterday? Yeah, well, the
Have you
president.
talked to him in addition, or is that the only call?
Well, the president called the speaker, and he also called me about the subject that we've all been talking about, which is the border. And I said to him what I just said to you a while ago, Mr. President, you caused this problem. There was no legislation that allowed the problem to be fixed. Why don't you just renew what the previous administration was doing, which got the border in decent shape? We tried on a bipartisan basis to see if we could agree to something. This is divided government. Senator Langford met with them for literally months. It was clear that wasn't going to pass. So I think it's safe to say going to a border bill right now is just a gimmick, a way to try to convince the American people that they're concerned about this when they caused it. Alec?
Senator McConnell, New York Times Santa College poll released last week showed Trump beating Biden significantly in Nevada, Arizona, also ahead in some other battleground states. But at the same time, Republican Senate candidates are behind Democrats in those states. Why do you think the discrepancy here?
Well, I think incumbency, as we learned in 22, is an advantage. Not a single incumbent lost in 22. Senator Daines and I have never said we thought this was going to be easy. We've got to beat an incumbent in Montana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and anywhere else we can. But we never said it was going to be a piece of cake. And we've got good candidates in all these places and are giving it everything we've got to win.
Thank you.